Today, let's discuss why TSMC, Taiwan's premier chip maker, is a big headache for the US's defense of Taiwan. Welcome to China Insider. I'm David Zhang. This is Seth Mountain, a Democrat congressman from Massachusetts. Listen to what he has to say.
Very clear to the Chinese that if you invade Taiwan, we're going to blow up TSMC. I just throw that out not because that's necessarily the best strategy, but because it's an example of
No. Mountain says that the U.S. should blow up TSMC, or Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Core, if China invades. Well, TSMC makes the world's most cutting-edge 3nm chips, and in 2022, around 60% of the global chips are made by TSMC. Is he right to blow up TSMC, the most crucial chip maker in the world? Well, I don't think this should be done except for one scenario. And unfortunately, I think Mountain said publicly what should have been privately conveyed. And let's talk about what exactly is that one scenario. The only time in which TSMC should be blown up is when Taiwan surrenders, and nothing else. First of all, Taiwan's ability to produce cutting-edge semiconductor chips is actually one of the reasons why it cannot fall into the hands of the CCP. If China managed to obtain the equipment and technology, that would be devastating for the world. Even without the surrender, war over Taiwan could actually halt the production of chips, and that's already placing us in a bad place. A Chinese invasion of Taiwan will stop TSMC's production. It's going to wipe out up to $1 trillion per year for the global economy in the first few years. If China decides to blockade Taiwan and cut off its access to raw materials, it also is devastating to the chip making. All this is, of course, salvageable as long as China doesn't win in the end. So this is why I said, under no other circumstances, except if Taiwan surrenders, should the U.S. blow up TSMC. Now, it may sound like that something this would actually break the U.S.-Taiwan relationship, but think about it this way. If Taiwan surrenders, there will be no more U.S.-Taiwan relationships left. At that point, it's just an island taken by China, and we would have bigger things to worry about. Again, like I said, TSMC blowing it up would actually be the least of what we have to worry about. Here's why. From a political perspective, the immediate aftermath of Taiwan's fall would mark the end of the U.S. presence in Asia. America is too far physically to protect allies like Japan and South Korea. Just look at the map of the Pacific. China's power projection, which basically means the sphere in which it can influence, expands beyond the nations to the east, which are South Korea and Japan, and it can also now project farther south, near where Taiwan used to be. In this scenario, China will completely and most likely by proxy, rather than physical control, have influence over Asia. And the next step is to kick out the US's presence. They can do so by forcing Asian partners to slow down trading with the United States, and this of course subsequently destroys American exports. And couple that with the access to high-tech and chip making from TSMC, America's tech dominance around the world will cease to exist. And if China can monopolize the Asian market, they can, once Taiwan falls, basically, the only way for Western nations to gain access to Asia by then is by kowtowing down to China. The Chinese Communist Party will establish control as we've never seen before. It wouldn't be long before American lives have to follow China, and with it, the global order reshapes. America, of course, will still exist with its military to protect the homeland, but it will no longer be the beacon of freedom and the center of the Western world. By that point, China will be Asia's hegemon. America will no longer enjoy the same type of freedoms they can exercise abroad in countries like Japan, South Korea, Thailand, and more, and they're actually now caved inside an ever-shrinking circle of influence. Most onshoring companies, like manufacturing for high technology, will actually run to China, as we know that they already provide, in practice, China will offer irrefutable incentives to offshore them from America. And slowly after that, within a period of time of 10 to 20 years, the entire world will shift away from the United States. Of course, to the authoritarian world. The choices will not be made voluntarily, of course, so for our perspective, we have to prevent the fall of Taiwan, and that's more important than ever. It is a direct U.S. interest like nothing before. Now, with all that said, if Taiwan's TSMC is in China's hands, would actually change the way of what we have been talking about just now by 10 times the speed. Things will happen really quickly. So this is why I think blowing up TSMC under that one condition, which is if Taiwan surrenders, is a necessary step to prevent China from accessing the technology. Now, of course, it will set the entire world back by 5 to 10 years in chip making, but it is also a chance for the U.S. to combat China's influence. Now, many would say that, including, of course, Taiwan officials, they would argue that we don't need to blow up TSMC. All we have to do is just sanction China economically, limit its access to chip material, Well, that may sound good on paper, but in practice, there are ways to circumvent sanctions. And if at some point The scenario we just described, which is that China would dominate, become the hegemon of Asia, they can access resources like never before. And of course, Taiwan is more than just the chip itself, right? The island itself, it's also a strategic location, and of course the people, millions of people living under a democratic society. We should not just exclude the danger of TSMC falling into the wrong hands, but we should also have a sound plan that involves preventing Taiwan's fall, no matter what happens. All right, that's it today for the argument on why we should blow up TSMC under one particular scenario, if Taiwan surrenders. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below what your thoughts are on the topic today. Also, please like this video and share it with your friends if you enjoy the content. All right, this is China Insider. I'm David Zhang. We'll see you next time.